Yes, I know I'm late, as you have already watched tons of full video reviews on this Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, but I promise you that this video will be totally different. If not, you can unsubscribe or even dislike this video. But first, let's roll the intro.
Here we go, at the top of the class on a roll, and it's time to run it up, yeah you know, maxed out, put the pedal to the floor, ayy.
Alright, to be serious on what exactly that I mean by being different is the fact that I'm totally not going to go through the overall specs and all the features, but I will break down the use cases and going to be diving straight into using this phone as my main daily smartphone for the past 1.5 weeks. And I'll tell you how it's like to compare against the Note 20 Ultra and also the S21 Ultra last year as well. Now let's start with the build quality of the S22 Ultra. Now if you're already used to a large size phone, then you'll be perfectly familiar with the handling of this phone. Now personally for me, I'm a huge fan of this kind of a boxy kind of design because it's very reminiscent of the recent Note devices similar to the Note 20 Ultra. Now, if you're coming from a slightly curved edges like the S21 Ultra 5G or before, then it will take you about a week or so to get used to this boxy kind of design. Now, there were some who complained, or reviewers complaining about how it was sharp at the edges. I mean, really dude, because this is the same form factor as the Note 20 Ultra, and that time everybody seems to love it, and right now, people seem to coming up with excuses to nitpick on the phone. Now, speaking of handling, because of the One UI software on Samsung devices, I've said it before and I'll say it again that this is the perfect phone to use with a single hand due to the simple swiping anywhere at the screen, where it shows you the notification menu, and swiping up anywhere as well goes to the app drawer. Now, this is something super simple, but yet not every smartphone makers are doing this. So there were no issues when using the phone on a single hand, even for a medium-sized hand like me, where I usually rest my pinky finger at the bottom of the phone, right in the middle, and simply navigate just using my thumb and using my index finger rested comfortably at the nice matte texture at the back of the phone. Now another weird nitpick is that people are complaining about the overall camera array, saying that it was boring. Well, you know what's funny? Because last year, when the S21 Ultra 5G was introduced, everybody was complaining about how, the camera bump is so big that Samsung has decided to embrace it. And now, when Samsung decided to go a bit more minimal, or the minimalistic look, people called it boring. Now mark my words guys, because you will start to see smartphone makers following this removal of the camera bump design very soon, similar to what Samsung has done, so stay tuned for those upcoming releases. Now for me, as mentioned in my first impressions video, I absolutely love this new minimalist camera bump design where although the lens protrudes, but I really like how it really keeps the overall back very simple. Now one thing to note is that if you are the kind of person who have butter fingers, not the band, but of course the fact that you know how you get a brand new phone and you always drop your phone as soon as you get them. I know there are some who are like that, because while the front and the rear has the Corning Gorilla Glass Victus Plus protection and the sides has the Armor Aluminium, if you happen to drop the phone on a flat angle like this, because of the protrusion of the lenses will take the most beating, so keep that in mind, or get a protective case if you're one of those people who drops their phone easily. Now as for me, I'm planning to order the Phantom White version of the phone because during my first impressions, I absolutely love that color. So this review unit is in black. Now because I love the Phantom White version, so along with that, I'm also planning to get the clear standing case for the sake of giving that added protection. Now speaking of Phantom White, as I really love the color, I also really do admire the green color though, but I would love to know what your thoughts are, or which color finish do you like? This Phantom Black, the Phantom White as you've seen in my first impressions video, the green, or even the brand new burgundy. Now another thing to mention is the fact that don't be alarmed if you shake the phone. there is a rattling sound, as that is the camera's OIS being shaken when the camera is not being used or even activated in the camera app. Now, we all know that Samsung is the #1 manufacturer when it comes to smartphone displays, and Samsung intentionally saved the best for their smartphones, and it is extremely obvious because this S22 Ultra 5G is hands down the best smartphone display compared to any out right now. Now, while nobody asked for a brighter screen, as even the previous generation smartphone like the S21 Ultra 5G was perfectly visible in bright daylight, the extra bright toggle is like the screen is challenging the sun, saying, "Come at me, bro," as everything was super clear, sharp and bright even during a super hot 12 PM afternoon weather. And being bright is not everything, as the screen is also good because it performs exceptionally well during a very dark environment. And if you're always under that kind of scenario, here's where there is the very clever extra dim toggle, where you'll find it under the accessibility settings. So having a big screen display with a very thin bezels means that you will really enjoy watching videos on the phone. And the color accuracy was not only good at the point of only watching movies on the phone like Netflix, YouTube, Amazon and Disney Plus Hotstar, but it's so good to the point that I use this phone as the color reference for my Blackmagic 6K RAW footage after I'm done with my color grading as well. Now, as for using the phone for daily tasks like scrolling on websites, the menu system and the social media pages was super fluid, and the overall adaptive refresh rate is not only felt, but it could also be seen through my camera's viewfinder when I was shooting the phone screen as well. As this static 1Hz up to 120Hz refresh rate was really great when it comes to having a smooth experience compared to smartphones that really force everything to 120Hz, which in return will kill your battery life faster. Next, as for the phone's cameras, it comes with 4 lenses in total, and mind you that these 4 lenses are all usable lenses, and someone you might or might not know might whip off his brand new or old Vivo X7500 XT Pro Max and say, "My phone has 4 lenses too." Well, guess what? Firstly, ask them if each of the lenses are really usable, because usually for certain smartphones who claim they have like 20 lenses at the back, is usually a dedicated macro lens, a depth sensor, a black and white sensor, a grandmother sensor. And no, that was not the case when it comes to the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra 5G, as we are looking at a different focal length for each of the lenses, where it's like using a 24mm lens for the main lens, a 70mm telephoto lens which can zoom up to a little more than 3 times from the main lens, because 24 times 3 is 72. Then there's the 13mm ultra wide lens and a crazy 230mm telephoto zoom lens that can zoom up to 10 times. So what does this mean, and why does it matter, Adam Lobo? Well, this means in simple terms that you can stand at one position, take out your phone and take so many different types of versatile pictures when you're standing on that exact position. Now, there were also a lot of people who complained about how Samsung was using the exact sensor as last year's S21 Ultra 5G, and the claim is totally untrue, because if you compare the exact hardware specs, first of all, the focal length is tighter and is different, and even though the megapixel count and the aperture value is the same, as you're looking at a different software experience, and you're definitely going to be getting a very good camera performance on this particular phone. Now, while this is not a comparison video, but here are some quick photo samples on me taking photos on these 3 phones. Now, on the ultra-wide lenses, you will find each to be very similar, just a bit more vibrant on the S22 Ultra and just a tad bit sharper as well. Now, when switching to the main lens, I see that the S22 Ultra has a bit better contrast on the roof area of the buildings and also at the greenery tree area. Then while there's not much of a difference for the 3x zoom, you'll start seeing better details on the colors on the 30x zoom on the S22 Ultra, where things start to really fall off on the Note 20 Ultra. And the image quality, as you can see in this image, looks better for the S22 Ultra 5G when it comes to the 100 times zoom. So overall, you be the judge over here on what exactly that you have seen. And I also saw some complaints about how the autofocus does not work properly on the S22 Ultra 5G. But as clearly seen in this footage, there weren't any issues at all, even when I was recording at 4K resolution. Then speaking of macro lenses and all, well, while there isn't a dedicated macro lens on the phone, but there is a mode called Focus Enhancer, which you can toggle it on and off in the app, which is essentially a macro mode where if you get very close to a subject, it will change the main 108 megapixel lens into the macro mode since the sensor is that huge. And speaking of this high megapixel sensor, the reason why the main lenses look really nice and sharp, because of the pixel binning that combines all of the pixels to a smaller 12 megapixel photo. And this is very much similar to how I shoot my videos here on YouTube, where I shoot both of the cameras that you see over here and including my product shots at 6K resolution, and then I downscale them into 4K to give you the extra sharpness in the videos that you see in this channel. Now, photos for the 10x and even the 30 times zoom were definitely passable for social media, but of course the novelty 100 times zoom is something that if you really need, but it's something that I wouldn't use, but it's nice that it's there. Now, Samsung has mentioned about how the portrait mode for subject has really improved, and yes, it did. And also there are improvements for portrait mode for pets, and hell yeah, it was. As little details like the edges of my pet cat Luna was properly separated from the background as well, which no other smartphone has come close to this. Now, I even intentionally messed up my hair, which is already messy during this shot, where you can see how well the front camera portrait mode did. And yes, the edge detection was really great, as you can clearly see. Now, among all of the lenses, if I really had to pick on which exactly is my favorite lens, I have to say that I love the 3x telephoto lens the most, as the images were tighter and had overall better depth, as it is still one of the best focal length for taking portrait mode shots as well. Now, while Samsung has mentioned there is a better integration with the social media apps for the cameras on the phone, I'm still the kind of person who uses the native camera app and then I edit it accordingly, only then I post it up on social media. But it's nice that Samsung has made this great integration too. So one of the main things that Samsung has highlighted about the phone thoroughly during the keynote presentation was the night shots or the nightography. Because yeah, smartphones, usually even mid-range smartphones, look really good in very bright daylight, but usually it's not the case when it comes to low light or nighttime photos. So yes, I did take a lot of photos at night using all of the lenses, and the portrait mode at night for the rear and the front was really great as well. And I even took some moving night images as well, and it even captured the photos with no motion blur. So yes, Samsung weren't kidding when they say that they have improved on their low light photography or the nightography, which I really think that it really performed exceptionally well. Now, switching over to video, the 8K video was still high in quality, although not my personal frame rate to use. Image stabilization for all of the lenses in 4K was still flawless and had extra stabilization for the super steady mode. But of course, it will go down to 1080p, so I would just stick to the 4K footage as it was also extremely stable too. And another feature that I really wanted to try out is the director's view on the phone, because while there are some smartphones that have this feature of having the both rear and the front video cameras to record at the same time, what's really good on the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra was the overall image stabilization compared to others that I've used. And the ability to change the rear lenses during recording was also really sweet and seamless as well. Now, portrait video was really improved a lot when it comes to human subjects with a super DSLR-like of a video style, and yes, it extremely works well on pets as tested on Luna as well. And the auto framing mode indeed came in handy for situations where there were more than one person in the frame, where it did adjust the frame accordingly in the camera app. Now both the super slow-mo and the slow motion still works very well, a feature which has not been highlighted, but yes, it's still there. And going again towards the night video this time, it was really great when it comes to the overall footage and of course the image stabilization, but if you really pixel peep, there might be a little jitter on some of the further subjects of the image. But as of now, nothing comes close to the amount of dynamic range that the S22 Ultra has as seen in this footage. And I also tested the auto FPS or the auto frames per second mode at night as well to see how well that performed when taking videos in low light for moving objects, and again I was floored by the results. Now there are so many other features like the Bixby Vision, the AR Zone, the Pro Video or even the Pro Mode, which I'm gonna go through hopefully really soon in my another video. So let me know at the comment section below what you guys think at the meantime of all the camera performance on the S22 Ultra 5G. And if you guys are enjoying this video, a nice big thumbs up would be very much appreciated and a subscription would be very sweet too. Hopefully there's no dislike so far. Next, from a software's perspective, I have said it earlier in this video and I'll obviously say it again, that the Samsung One UI, especially on this version 4.1, is the best Android skin compared to any other Android devices, including the stock Android experience or even the Oxygen OS, which has been going downhill as of late. Now it is simple yet very customizable to how you want, and I'm saying this even without using the Good Lock app, which is not available here in Malaysia, but I'm already really appreciating the One UI version 4. And of course simple things like swiping up and down for the notification menu from anywhere from the screen, and going to each menu within the settings are so seamless and easy, as simple things like changing the screen timeout or even changing the refresh rate is directly available on the display menu, as opposed to something like the Xiaomi MIUI where you need to go deeper like into the advanced settings or sometimes even deeper to more settings. And it's nice that it's super simple where you can find all the display settings at the display area when you see it in the settings. Now if you missed my review of the Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, I've actually went through all of my favorite features of this new One UI version 4, but I'm planning to do a dedicated post or even a video on why that I consider One UI to be a gold standard when it comes to smartphones on Android phones. Now in terms of using the phone daily, gone are the days of using Gboard as my keyboard of choice, because I really love the native keyboard app on this One UI. And with this new Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset, the camera launches quickly, games run smoothly, and scrolling around and using the phone daily felt extremely fluid without any issues thus far. Now I was initially worried about the overheating issues because I have used other smartphones with this exact higher end Snapdragon chipset and it overheats like crazy. Now speaking of crazy, call me crazy, but I always love the Exynos chipset on Samsung devices, so good news for you Snapdragon lovers, because now you can rejoice. And yes, for the first time ever, an S Pen built in inside of the S series, which is of course the spiritual inheritor of Samsung's not so old Note lineup. So the daily use for the S Pen for me felt very familiar since I've been using lots of Note devices of the past. And yes, latency was significantly better. And it's nice to know that finally my teammate Mo can understand what I screenshot and write on the pictures that I send to him when I have an idea for a thumbnail where usually he has absolutely no idea what I'm trying to write on the screen, because I usually use my fingers instead. So it's nice that now I have the S Pen. Now if I really had a choice, and this is of course my personal preference, because while it is nice that the phone had a S Pen in a matte finish like this, I kind of prefer when the S Pen came with the same color finish. But yes, that is just a personal preference. But of course, this has a glossy finish compared to the matte finish, which means that on the matte finish will grip way better than this glossy finish on the previous model. And in case you're wondering, yes, you can use the S Pen from your older Note devices and you can use it on this new S22 Ultra 5G. But of course, the middle button from the older Note devices would not work because it is paired with the older devices. Now another thing to note, pun intended, is that if you're looking to ride the phone when it's placed on a table, I would advise against it because it does wobble quite a lot if you want to do so. So I would advise to just get a case to prevent from the wobble, or you can use the S Pen when you hold the phone on the other hand instead to get a better riding experience. Now here's where I'll be doing another dedicated video and a blog post on the tips and tricks that you can use on the S Pen to go deeper, so of course stay tuned for that. Now, battery life on the S22 Ultra was really great as I got some very interesting results because I tested the daily usage of the smartphone for 2 scenarios all the time, and no, it was not a battery drain test because I always believe that a daily usage is way more close to how you use in real life. So scenario number 1 is when I use it daily with the maximum QHD plus resolution and the 120Hz adaptive display with dark mode turned on, and I got an average of 6 hours and 25 minutes when I was at 10% battery, and even with playing Genshin Impact for 1 hour and 27 minutes. And on some days I went with scenario number 2 by going with the FHD plus resolution, and here's where it was very interesting because I had the same settings as I mentioned earlier, and here's where I got a total of 6 hours and 36 minutes when I was at 10% battery. Now here's where it was interesting because not only it saved me a mere 10 minutes by going down to FHD+, so might as well I just go all the way when it comes to the screen resolution when I'm using the phone every single day, and I think you should do too. Now while the phone can support up to 45 watts fast charging, but there were reports or some people complained about how it does not charge up to 45 watts. Unfortunately, I went to many Samsung outlets, but the 45 watts original charger is not available for sale yet here in Malaysia, so I'll wait for that instead to give my proper judgment instead of using a typical third-party chargers, so stay tuned for that once again. And just so you know, there is fast wireless charging up to 15 watts and reverse wireless charging up to 4.5 watts. Now while playing games were really nice and smooth for everything that I throw at it. For games like PUBG Mobile, that you can go up to Ultra HD for graphics and frame rate up to Ultra. And yes, there were no issues at all over here. And it also did an amazing job with COD Mobile on max frame rate and very high when it comes to the overall graphics. Gameplay on Asphalt 9 was truly remarkable because of the phone's stereo speakers and of course the display itself with high quality settings on the graphics. But among all, the main game that I really wanted to test the phone on was of course Genshin Impact, where the settings were at medium with 60 frames per second with motion blur turned off, which I felt it was the best gaming experience when it comes to using it on this particular phone, especially with the WQHD plus resolution. The overall graphics and how everything looks was super sharp and just mwah. Now it took about 15 minutes or so for the phone to become warm, but as opposed to most smartphones, the warmth was distributed according to the whole entire smartphone instead of just typically at the top part, which happens to a lot of other smartphones. So that for me was a very good thing. Now in terms of the comfort level when playing games, especially with the boxy design, for me and my buddy Lee Hood, who has a mid-sized hand, there were no issues at all. But someone who have a larger hand, it might be a little uncomfortable when it comes to playing games for a really long time, as the edge might be touching the palm instead of the fingers like how it was for us. So yes, in conclusion, with all that have been said, and all that have been done in testing the phone every single day, after testing the phone for 1.5 weeks, I can say that this is the Note sequel that we never got, and it is finally here. And for those of you who feel that Samsung's foldable is something that you would not go for because of the price and of course the whole foldable form factor, this will be a very compelling option on every other aspect, because this phone was not only released at the same exact price last year, but it also comes with a free S Pen on top of that. As for me, I can confidently say that the S22 Ultra has made its anchor to be the default best of the best of Android smartphones to use, and of course, it will be in my pocket daily as well. Now do check out my video review of last year's S21 Ultra 5G over here, and I also did a video to cover the whole Samsung Galaxy Note generation, which I put a lot of effort as well over here, and I'll see you in my next video.